Hello, everyone. I'm Asha Nayaswamy. This is Lakshmi Lapine, and we're here continuing our conversations with Asha. Millennials speak. I'm Asha, and she's the millennial. So here we go. The topic that we talked about talking about today was the place of God in the life of what we are calling millennials. I grew up Jewish, so I didn't grow up in a Christian tradition, but the Christian tradition was active all around me, indicated by simple things like, families went to church on Sunday, or at least Sunday morning was respected. And it's a total zero now. Sunday morning is for soccer matches. And I think you all grew up with it that way. And now that many of you are parents, it doesn't seem odd to you that Sunday morning, the epitome of it, which I've expressed in other contexts, was I exercised swimming, at least I used to, at the YMCA. And on Easter morning, they had special Easter hours from 9 to 1, which was like we could all go swimming at the Young Men's Christian Association on Easter morning. Nobody was shocked. It just seemed, but to me, I was absolutely shocked that would be what was happening. So talk to me about it. Tell me about what your upbringing was like, and what the role of God and religion played in the overall culture that you grew up in.
Mm. Well, personally, I was raised in a Catholic household and with the Catholic tradition. Interestingly, my parents they taught us what they knew, which was Catholicism, and I went up through confirmation, which in the Catholic Church happens when you're 16. And at that point, after my confirmation, my parents said to me, as they had said to my sister 2 years prior when she went through hers, at this point, you are welcome to explore and choose any religion that you want, which always feels backwards because you're being confirmed, you're choosing this religion. But what my mother always told us is she felt a desire and a moral obligation to give us a foundation in faith. But from there, it was up to us to continue that exploration and to find what God truly meant for ourselves, for each one of us individually, my
Your
sister
mother
and
sincere? Was your mother sincere in teaching you Catholic, or did she just do it because? Was she a sincere Catholic, or was she practicing for the sake of the children?
I think they were both practicing for the sake of the children because as soon as I was the youngest, as soon as I was confirmed, I noticed a very drastic drop off in church attendance. We became, we would go on holidays and things like that. But I think it was, as I said, the word that always struck me was that my mother felt and my father, they felt they had a moral obligation to ground us in a faith so that we knew what that meant. And I was actually always grateful for that because I grew up and I didn't feel um, afraid of the concept of God, confused of the concept of God. I had one definition of it, but it was a term that made sense to me in my life and that I had heard. I was comfortable exploring it. So when I began, as we talked about a few weeks ago, my exploration into an inner religion and Eastern religions, I was comfortable with the use of the term God. And as you and I were talking about this topic for today, I thought about one of my closest friends who's my coworker. And as devoutly as I am on a spiritual path and have committed my life to God, she is a staunch atheist to the point that they don't say God bless you in their home, her two children. I'll always say it because it's second nature. And they say, we say Gesundheit, just very clearly correcting
Gesundheit
it.
is German for God bless you, isn't it?
I know. We can't be perfect. But
I think that's what it means. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, go ahead.
right.
We're moving right along. Uh-huh.
But what struck me is this is a young woman, she's my age. She is a good person. She believes in kindness and compassion. She believes in justice and equality. All of these concepts that really are core to brotherhood, to peace, to forming bonds and relationships based in unity, which are foundational on the spiritual path. And it's surprising to me, it got me thinking, what does it look like to relate to those concepts without God there in the center. For me, those concepts are foreign without God because they're infused with the idea of the divine. The divine is what manifests kindness, unity, brotherhood, peace. Um, and so I think it's an interesting topic to start to think about. And she and I actually, we have great conversations. We talk about what death means to both of us, what happens when we die. We talk about kindness, we talk about love, and we get to have these conversations and looking at it from both perspectives. I've learned a lot.
Well, is her point of view more common than yours? It is a generational thing.
I think it is. I think we've slowly steered away from religion. And perhaps that's because many people have steered away from the dogma of religion. And there wasn't anything there clearly to fill in that gap. But I think there's also what I've seen in my specific friend that I'm talking about and in some of my peers in general is this idea that these attitudes, um, these concepts of equality, compassion, brotherhood that we've been talking about, they're things that need to be fought for. They're things that we're fighting for right now, currently in our society. And I think the second that the fight comes into part of that process, the ego becomes so grounded in the middle of it. And what we do is we start to think about the changes. Everything becomes centered around I. What do I need to do to be better in the world? What do I need to do to create peace in the world? What do I need to do to make the world a better place? This is the narrative that I hear from my generation. And it's a difficult place to be because what change can I make without that power and that source of God flowing through?
So is the dilemma because a person can't change himself, or is it because a person can't change the world? Where does the dilemma come in?
I think that the dilemma comes in that are when we are fighting to change something in our own lives or in the world, and are we're basing that change or that desire on something that is outside of ourselves, something that's outside, then we become tethered to the outcome or we become tethered to the change in a way that's always forcing us further and further out. We've forgotten to look inside, and we've forgotten to look at what it means um, to grow from within. You know, for me, the root of living a life for God or living on a spiritual path is the concept of living in harmony. This is really, the essence of what we're trying to do. I was thinking about the the huge amount of conversation there is around climate change right now, and what it really means to, what we're fighting for is to save the planet, but really from a spiritual standpoint, I believe what we're fighting to do is to live in harmony with the planet. But that word gets lost when spirituality and God aren't brought into the conversation, because what are we harmonizing to if we don't have God there in the center as our pole star? There's nothing to harmonize to. We're always just harmonizing or trying to reach out for something that's further outside of ourselves.
So how do you see this serving or not serving the people that you work with, the people that you know, the people that you grew up with? Like, how does it manifest in a person's individual life? Where does that leave them? Why would a person cling to atheism um, when it seems to, because the word fight is there, it seems like it'd be very depressing. Um, if when you're fighting for climate change, for example, you're actually fighting against the people who don't believe in it and who are doing things to hurt the planet. So you actually have a personified enemy. So how does that affect people's consciousness in this issue? And you understand what the question is.
I think I do. And I think the best way to describe it, it's what you've just alluded to in the way that you were speaking. When we are motivated to act in whatever way that may be from a place of that is rooted in an agitation of some sort. So again, if I'm looking at something in the world and I need something or I want something to be different, even if my desire is noble and my desire is good, it's rooted in a source of agitation. It's rooted in a source of something that needs to be different. Or even, we don't have to look at it in terms of political changes. It can also just be serving your family, raising your children. Whenever we are rooted in, our desire is rooted in something outside of us, it's built from a place of agitation. And that consciousness continues to grow. That agitation, no matter how successful we are outwardly in the material world in accomplishing our goal, if it's rooted from a place of agitation, we can never find that perfect stillness, which means we can never come back to that place of of happiness and of satisfaction. I think the opposite of that, living on a spiritual path and inviting God into our world. Again, I've used the term already, but harmony. It comes back to the difference between acting from a place of agitation or acting from a place of harmony. I think about our friends that live in Washington on the Camino farm, the Ananda farm on Camino Island in Washington. And this farm is a magical place where just beauty happens and food is grown and the animals are all living a dharmic lifestyle, and everyone is working in cooperation. And it's because the way our friends serve on that farm is they serve as custodians of that land. And they're allowing something else to flow through. They have no expectation or need to see anything manifest. They simply act as custodians of that land. And I think that living the spiritual path and inviting God into our lives teaches each one of us what it means to act as a custodian for whatever belief it is that we have, whatever family it is that we're raising. But when we can allow ourselves to be the custodian of something and allow that energy to flow through us, then we're working in harmony with the greater divine laws of the world and the universe.
So why, as articulate as you are in this point of view, what is it about God versus atheism that causes your friend to reject God? I mean, you say she's a colleague. That means she works in education. She has children. And she's obviously high-minded in what she's trying to do. She's not out there selling some terrible product in order to make money. So why is she so adamant in her atheism? Are you just dealing with vocabulary? What does atheism mean to her? What has she rejected?
I think that what she has rejected is the belief that anything that happens in her life is out of her control. I think that's really the root of what it comes down to. If we surrender to a higher power, then we aren't in control of what happens around us. And that is, for most people, a very terrifying thought.
So would you say generationally, when you were playing water polo with your friends, when you've been teaching high school children, is it control that people are craving? Does atheism make them feel more in control?
I can only speak from the experience that my friend has shared with me on this, but I do believe that there is a relationship between the two. We live in a world that is, and I'm not even just talking about current circumstances in April of 2020, but we live in a world that is constantly changing and evolving from day to day, really from moment to moment. And that lack of control is really, I wanted to say something other than it's just terrifying, because that's not the
Terrifying is the
what I
word.
would be more. Yeah, it's
Terrifying is the word that I would come up with. Okay,
yeah,
that's
it
more
is.
simplifying.
It leaves us feeling, if we can't predict what's happening outside of us, then I think it comes back to the feeling that I have to be able to control what's happening within me. And so if I take charge of my life, if I understand my morals and my values and my principles, and I stand staunchly in them and stand up against all that I find to be uh, righteous in the world, or if I stand up for all that I find to be righteous in the world, then at the end of the day, I can control those things that are controllable, and the rest of the world will have to, I can fit myself into it. I don't have to worry about being so adaptable and amenable.
So what happens after the pandemic, if we ever come out of this? And we walk out to, like we come out of a bunker and we find that things are just simply not what they were. What happens to the atheists at that point?
I don't know. I really, it's interesting because I don't, I cannot imagine what what it looks like to live a life without God. So it's hard for me to even put myself in that perspective or to even understand what that would mean, because so long ago when I took discipleship, and probably even before that, I surrendered my life to God.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think, what I can speak to is the reality that we are witnessing an opportunity for every single person in the world, regardless of their belief in God or not. We're witnessing an ability to stand on our own inner strength, to find those things that make us stronger, and to find those places of weakness that are causing pain, fear, and anxiety. And I think there's a positive and a negative in that we can find those places. There's an opportunity to really rise up and find our own inner strength, which is, in essence, the beginning of spiritual movement and spiritual progression. We're all moving incrementally closer to God, whether we believe in Him or not. I don't know. Yeah, that's a difficult question for me to answer.
But it is the real question. I mean, in a very real sense. I'm going to go back just a moment.
Mm.
Long before I took discipleship, I had surrendered my life to God. What does that mean? I mean, those are words that have meaning to you, but what is the meaning of those words?
For me, what the meaning of that is that no matter what I'm facing emotionally inside, so whether I'm facing something with fear or with joy and courage, whatever it may be, that I have tethered myself to the belief that everything that is coming to me in my life is a lesson that's going to help me to grow stronger, in the knowledge that, trying to think of a way to say it that doesn't just speak to the world of Ananda, but can speak beyond that. What I want to say is that to shed the ego, but that's a difficult concept to discuss in the world. Shedding the ego really means understanding that everything that happens to us in life is just a lesson to bring us closer to that place of knowing that true happiness lies within, that the circumstances outside are neutral, and the place of security and protection, and ultimately of control, to use this word that we've been discussing today, it's sheltered within. It's sheltered within our own hearts, and nothing outside of us can change that reality. So to surrender to God is to know that God has a plan for you, that there is a plan for you, and that everything that happens is a loving hand that's helping you to grow stronger.
And you know as well as I do that if a person can't cross over, because what you're really talking about is somewhere, somehow you believe there is and most likely you have experienced that there is a transcendent loving force that cares about me and that loves you in some way. It's very interesting to me that the 12-step program, which of course is very popular in lots of ways and a lot of people have to get involved in it, there comes the point where you surrender to a higher power. And the basis of that surrender and the basis of the 12 steps is that you've been driven beyond what you can cope with on your own. So that implies that prior to coming to God, there has to be suffering. And is there any context of your generation, I'll go back to that, or your friend, where does suffering fit into all of this? Or if in fact Yogananda's predictions for great chaos are true, if this pandemic marks a line in the sand when things begin to disintegrate, how do you think the people around you are going to be able to cope with that? What do you think is going to happen?
I think it is going to be a very big test of the consciousness of my generation, because the truth is, and I say this with complete humility, every individual goes through their own journey, and every individual has suffering on various levels that some of us can't imagine. But in my experience generationally, we haven't seen culturally a huge shift in suffering. We haven't gone through something collectively where we've all had to band together and face a common enemy in that sense. Um, and so I think that the test of our strength, if this is the beginning of the predictions that Yogananda has talked about, what this means for each one of us is what Swami Kriyananda writes at the beginning of Raja Yoga, a complete revolution of the mind. We will see, I believe, a generation who has to shift everything that they've known and everything they think, because the outward reality is no longer going to be the tangible reality we can hold on to. We're going to have to turn within to our own hearts, to our own understanding of the world, and to find a way to build happiness from within, because everything will shift outwardly, and those things that we knew to be comforting and safe are going to fall away just one by one.
I mean, this is the people who've lived a little longer. The stock market doesn't always go up. It just doesn't happen like that. But you have a whole generation of, of, of brokers
Mm-hmm.
who only know that the stock market goes up, or that each generation is wealthier and more comfortable than the generation before it. Do you think that we spoke earlier about the trophy generation getting a prize just for showing up. Do you think that despite that, do you think that the character is there as a group? Do you think the character is there that as a group people will be happy to do something else or capable of doing something else? Or do you think there's so much weakness in the fabric that it'll just rip apart? What do you think?
I do think that the grit generationally is there. There's a level of, and this is what we were discussing in that first conversation around the trophy generation, there's a level of passivity that we've been able to get away with. Another thing along with the trophy generation, that the millennials have been called is the like generation, because we can go online and click the thumbs up and we just like things and we feel like we're being a part of the movement, but I don't actually have to do anything. I can do it from the comfort and safety of my own home. As the world shifts and that reality changes, and we have to stand up and be a part of those shifts in a really visceral way, I think that we are going to find within us the desire to change, the desire to be good. That's why I'll finish that thought, but to go back to my friend who I was thinking about, that's why I find it so, I wouldn't be friends with someone who wasn't compassionate and kind and loving. All of those qualities are there. She simply cannot accept the reality that there's a divine power guiding her life. So those qualities will translate. And as soon as the material and the control is stripped away, I believe that more of us are going to grab onto that reality of a divine power. So we are headed in that direction, and we'll see it. A friend, about 5 years ago, a friend at Ananda had said to me, everyone comes to Ananda thinking that what they're going to find are unicorns, but they're surprised when they come and all they find are workhorses. Um, and it's the truth. I think that was a play off something that maybe was it Swami Kriyananda had said, or someone, I'm not sure. He was building off something that someone else had said, but it was a charming idea that you come and you think everything is just magical and perfect, and what you see within each individual devotee is the grit and the desire and the willingness to work. Dynamic energy is the foundation of our path. And I see that generationally in the millennial generation as well.
People are people. And now here's another part of it, which is very real, which is what I've thought about a lot. When I see, having grown up with Master's predictions and having just lived in this expectation that people are growing up for a different world than the one they think they're growing up for. I've often thought, I think you're going to be a lot happier when your life becomes more compelling. I don't think superficial comfort is very, very gratifying. Do you think that there's a piece of that where there's a soul knowledge that's going to rise in heroism? Am I being optimistic, or do you think it's true?
Not at all. I think you're absolutely, I think it's absolutely true. And what you're saying is encouraging, and it gives a lot of hope. I think even within my generation, I can see there's a tiredness already with the materialism because things are so readily accessible. We can get on Amazon and get anything we need within a week, anything in the world. And that gets boring after a while.
It's really boring, super boring. Exactly right. My 1 year of college, which was literally 50 years ago, um, one of the reasons, among the many reasons why I didn't like it, was I felt like we wanted a real life, and we were just living this sheltered, parent-supported comfort zone. I was at Stanford. I was at a fancy school, and just like, but we were adults. We needed to have our hands on something that was real to us. I mean, when I learned Education for Life, I began to understand this more. But I do think many people don't have the imagination to realize a complete alternative is available. But when they're dumped out of the basket onto the sidewalk, there's a lot of creative energy there. Much of what is also could be criticized, but there's also tremendous amount of creative energy there. Fair enough? You think so?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think as we begin to declutter, as you were speaking, I was just thinking about all the ways that the trends of minimalism and decluttering and this, they even call it, the hashtag van life, living out of your van and adventuring and wandering, this nomadic gypsy lifestyle. There's a resurgence of that in the creativity that it creates, and allows, in the freedom, all of those qualities. I believe that as we watch this world change and perhaps are headed into harder times that are in the future, I think we'll see those qualities rise. Not only, but it won't be outward anymore. It won't be a desire or need to adventure in my van and go see incredible places. It's what's the adventure? What does the adventure look like if I'm exploring from within? Because those qualities and aspirations don't leave. But what we'll find is that adventure awaits us when we can turn the energy in, when we can turn to meditation. There's so many conversations around what true happiness is in our world today. We're just on the brink of it, but people are starting to dance with the idea of what it means to be happy without the outward definitions and identifications.
Well, if we believe in God, which I do, that we are part of a greater reality and there is a plan, then everyone is born for the time that they're living in. And I'll finish my life in this reality, but your life and the life of your peers will happen, assuming that this is the beginning of something new. It'll happen in a wholly new reality, and nothing that you expect or much that you expect will just be taken away from you. But we have to believe. I mean, not have to, but I mean, the worldview that I know we share includes the belief that people know what they're doing. I mean, their souls know what they're doing, and God knows what He's doing with them. The whole point of cataclysmic shift is to break people's false idea that I'm in charge. Um, so I don't think it's going to be easy. Do you feel uneasy about it not being easy? You know what I mean? Uh-huh.
Personally, I don't. I mean, it would be glib to say that there aren't moments of where I question, am I ready to really watch my lifestyle change completely? But, the root of the power of living a spiritual life and inviting God into your life is that as you grow on a spiritual path, especially a path like self-realization, which is all about the inner experience, what we learn is everything we see, our reality is just a play of light and shadow, that it's not the true reality. And when you can embrace that, what is there to be afraid of? Everything that's happening is an opportunity for me to be malleable and flexible and grow and learn. And that doesn't mean that it won't come with fear or work or anxiety at various times. But underneath it all, I know my reality and my home is in God, which is the essence of why we need God in our lives. Because if all you have is your reality and your reality is crumbling in front of you, then what do you have to stand on?
Exactly. That was Swamiji's advice. Make a deep spiritual effort now because you're going to need it. That's how he put it when he was speaking, building spiritual power against troubled times. Take the opportunity now because you're going to need it. And so I think that's where we are now. So thank you very much, sister. Lovely to talk to you.
You too.